Ah yes, Silent Hill 2. The game that not only makes you really dig deep to find the things you're looking for, but also makes pizza sound really good right about now.
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?
She said she was fine by herself.
Silent Hill 2 is often touted as the peak of psychological horror, and for many fans, the peak of the entire series. It's got all the ingredients for a terrifying yet deeply personal experience. The fog, the atmosphere, the setting that feels like it's breathing down your neck. And if you're anything like me, then the soundtrack played a big role in your life. This game didn't only leave a mark on the people who played it, it hooked an entire generation through reputation alone. You can find clips, analysis videos, forum threads, even people describing scenes they couldn't forget years later. So when the remake finally arrived, expectations were insanely high. But somehow, it didn't just revive the experience, it sharpened it. It made the town of Silent Hill feel more real, more intimate, and honestly, more terrifying than ever. And that's where our story begins. The game follows a man by the name of James Sunderland, an ordinary guy who arrives in Silent Hill after receiving a letter from his wife, Mary. But there's just one problem. James also tells us that Mary died 3 years ago. So, right away, the game hands you this contradiction. And instead of explaining it, it lets you sit in it, because James doesn't come here for sightseeing. He comes here clinging to the very idea that the letter has to mean something, even if it shouldn't be possible. And once he steps into the fog, the town itself starts to close. Roads are cut off, blocked by walls, wrapped in this strange fabric, like the place is quarantined. Gates are chained shut, and certain doors refuses to budge. It no longer feels like you're finding answers, but it does feel like steps. Steps that aren't just leading James forward, but deeper. And that's when the series starts to do what it's known for. Because the monsters here aren't just enemies, they're responses. Responses to his guilt, his shame, and ultimately his punishment. And if you really pay close attention, it gets worse, but in the best way possible. The designs, the timing, even the movements, it all starts to feel intentional. Which means, if you only see them as monsters, then you're kind of missing the entire point. Right, Vincent?
Yes, that's it.
Which is exactly why we're here. Tonight, we're keeping the lights low and staying in the lane that this channel is known for. We're breaking down every monster in Silent Hill 2. What they are, why they look the way they do, and what they represent. So, grab that dairy-free popcorn, maybe a flashlight, and get ready to jump right into the other world of Silent Hill. The lying figure is the very first monster James encounters, and it tells you almost everything you need to know about the game without saying a word. Well, kind of. Its entire body is bound in a flesh-like straitjacket. No eyes, no mouth, just this twitching, zipped-up shape stumbling toward you like it's being crushed under the weight of its own existence. When it attacks, it doesn't swing, but it does spray this corrosive mist from a wound in its chest, like it's forcing pain out because it has nowhere else to put it. It is suffering, and that's the core of what this monster is. A manifestation of pain that can't be broken down. Emotion that's been buried so deep, it starts to rot. You can hear it in the way it sounds. A low, wet, dragging noise across the pavement floor. The twitchy, bubbling breaths that sound like they're caught in a throat that can't open. It exists in this constant state of strained breathing. Official sources describe the lying figure as a patient writhing in agony. But within the context of James's psyche, it becomes something even more personal. A reflection of his emotional paralysis, the guilt, denial, and ultimately the helplessness he carries from Mary's illness and everything else that followed. Even its name, the lying figure, feels like a double entendre. It lies prone, collapsed, but more than that, it lies. Just like James is lying to himself about why he's really here. What makes the lying figure even more disturbing is that it doesn't stay the same. In the earliest areas, it appears pale and formless. This version reflects James at his most emotionally repressed. But deeper into the game you go, the creature begins to change. In the otherworld, especially inside Brookhaven Hospital, the prison, and later in the Lakeview Hotel, the lying figure takes on a noticeably more feminine shape. These changes aren't just for looks. They suggest that the lying figure isn't just James anymore, but it may be his perception of Mary, not as she truly was, but as James remembers her through a fog of guilt, desire, and emotional decay. These variants explode after killing it. Where the original simply vented its pain, now it bursts. The symbolism is clear. James's emotional pressure is no longer containable. The lies aren't just leaking out, now they're bursting. In the remake, these layers are pushed even deeper. The lying figure's design more strongly resembles a body bag, or the silhouettes of someone lying motionless in a hospital bed. Which leads us to the most important question. Who does James see when he looks at it? Mary, himself, or possibly both? The lying figure may be your first enemy, but it isn't there just to teach you how to fight. It's there to teach you how this world works. This is just the beginning, and already it's too much to carry. The Mannequin is one of those monsters where you really can't just put two and two together. Literally. With just two pairs of long, pale legs stuck together at the waist, the figure is entirely built from parts meant to be looked at, but not meant to speak, think, or even feel. You first encounter the Mannequin early in the Woodside Apartments, standing motionless in the corner of a dimly lit room, completely still, until it attacks. For many players, it's one of the first jump scares that really lands, because there's something uniquely strange about the way it moves. It doesn't walk toward you, it lurches forward, stomps in these unnatural bursts of aggression, as if it's not alive, but animated by something James doesn't really want to acknowledge. The Mannequin is widely interpreted as a representation of James's sexual frustration and objectification of women, particularly Mary. The fact that it has two sets of legs but no head, torso, or even a face tells us that it's designed to be looked at, not engaged with. It's a walking symbol of desire, a body without an identity. James loved Mary, that much is clear, but he also resented what her illness did to their relationship. And that discomfort, that repression, that guilt, the shame of wanting someone who was suffering, it all coalesces into the silent, faceless form, a body that's been reduced to an object, repeating the worst parts of James's subconscious thoughts. Its name says it all. Mannequin, an object for display, lifeless, decorative, and disposable. The sound it makes drives this even deeper. When the mannequin attacks, it makes these wet, blunt, crashing noises, like heavy limbs hitting the floor. You don't hear a creature in pain, all you hear is impact. And that alone is pretty telling. There's no voice here because it physically can't have one. Just like James's guilt tried to silence the parts of Mary he couldn't deal with. You'll often find them waiting in corners, hiding together, lined up like merchandise, posing, waiting to be purchased. Later in the game, particularly in the prison area, a new variant appears. This version doesn't stand. It scuttles on all fours, scaling walls and ceilings like a spider. Its movements are quick, erratic, and pretty animalistic. The earlier mannequin was passive and posed, yet this one is completely feral. It still strikes with blunt weights, but with more unique angles of attack. If you're quiet enough, you can tell when one is near. It lets out a high-pitched insectoid scream that cuts through the ambient dread. That sound feels alive, like something cornered and desperate, and it changes how we interpret the monster entirely. If the original mannequin represented objectified desire, the crawling variant represents more of a reaction to that desire, a response to everything James has tried to suppress. And that's the symbolism of this monster. It reflects him. A monster made of legs, a body without a face, a desire without love. The Bubblehead Nurse is Silent Hill 2 at its most blunt and its most nuanced all at once. On the surface, they appear almost erotic. Short skirts, exposed legs, tight uniforms, and even high heels. But the second you see their heads, that fantasy turns nightmarish, with their faces disturbingly swollen, hence the name Bubblehead. Their movements are seriously creepy, like something stuck between a seizure and a striptease. These nurses are projections. They are the internal conflict between James's sexual frustration and the trauma of watching Mary suffer in a place just like this. James spent years in hospitals, visiting Mary as her illness worsened. That place became emotionally repulsive to him. The nurses who once represented care now become symbols of sexualized cruelty. Their seductive shapes are paired with deformed heads, as if James wants to look but can't bear to see their faces. The Bubblehead Nurse is designed to provoke desire and repulsion at the same time. They're faceless, headless, voiceless, but somehow still intimate. They're not Mary, but they carry the weight of her absence. They embody the part of James that resents what she became, and maybe even resents himself for the moments he still wanted her. Their sound design only reinforces this meaning. When still, they make these breathy, wet, inhaling noises, almost like they're panting or choking at the same time. And like the lying figure, the Bubblehead Nurse has a later variant found deeper in the otherworld. These later versions move more erratically and are far more violent. Their sounds become more shrill, their twitching more manic. If you were to ask me, it reflects James's worsening state of mind. As the truth creeps closer, the projections become more unstable, a reoccurring theme as you progress through the story. Let's pause for a moment. Right there. If you look closely at their mouths, each one is marked with a red patch. It's easy to miss at first, but it immediately recalls to something we as players have seen time and time again. No? Don't see it? Well, these resemble the red save squares scattered across Silent Hill. These save points appear on walls and surfaces like bleeding symbols, glowing moments where James is forced to pause, to reflect, and to remember. The red square over the mouth may symbolize silence, but not a peaceful one. It feels like forced silence, repression, a gag on something that once spoke, a silencing of pain that James couldn't bear to hear, whether it was Mary's suffering, her frustration, or even her anger. Because we know Mary wasn't always kind to James in the final stages of her illness. Her words became sharper, sometimes cruel, whether from the pain, the fear, or the despair of knowing that she was dying. James endured that. And this mark may represent those moments, the moments where James wanted her to stop, to just be quiet, to be the Mary he remembered, not the Mary who existed in those final agonizing months. So the red square becomes a kind of paradox. It's both a memory and a memory suppressor, a save point in the narrative, and a trauma in James's emotional journey. The nurses bear that silence on their mouths, just as James carried it in his mind. The bubblehead nurses are tragic, a monster James fights because it reminds him of Mary, of intimacy, and shame. It's an embodiment of everything he can't ask for and everything he can't forgive himself for wanting. Flesh Lips appears only once in the remake, but that one encounter is enough to leave a lasting impression. Floating around in room 17 deep within Brookhaven Hospital, this monster crashes down with two pale legs beneath a fleshy upper mass that closely resembles a hospital bed. From under it pops a creepy, oversized mouth. But before we can even dive further into this monster, let's take a step back before the fight, because there's something important about James and his mindset that I feel plays a role in its manifestation. More specifically, I'm talking about the scene where Laura mentions meeting Mary in the hospital.
Mary's my friend. We met at the hospital last year.
Stop lying.
James's response is very telling. He promised he wouldn't get upset, but immediately he lashes out, showing just how brittle his patience is. That brief flash of anger reveals a deeper wound. James is suppressing and he knows it. Laura locks him in the room, and that's when the monster appears. In the original, you fought two of these bad boys. The remake takes this down to one, but the change only makes it more personal. One embodiment of a memory James can't suppress any longer. The Flesh Lip is a manifestation of James's guilt, his repressed sexuality, and the psychological torments he endured as Mary's condition worsened. Every piece of its design ties back to her. How she looked, how she spoke, and how James felt during her sickness, her dependency, her deterioration, and more notably, her words. The oversized lips can be read as a symbol of toxic communication, and the way the monster grabs James, lifting him off the floor by the neck, turns that silence into punishment. This is a voice he tried to not hear, and yet a presence he tried to ignore. The Creepers are one of the only monsters in Silent Hill 2 that doesn't feel directly tied to James, but instead carried over from someone else's trauma. These insect-like creatures originally appeared in the first Silent Hill, but it was tied to Alessa Gillespie's intense phobia of bugs, and while most of Silent Hill 2's monsters are specifically manifested for James, the return of the Creeper suggests something deeper. Not all of Silent Hill is his. Some things were already here. Scuttling across floors and ceilings, darting out of vents, cracks, and corners, they're small and incredibly annoying. You rarely see them coming, but you almost always hear them. Their behavior is more parasitic than aggressive, less about confrontation and more about intrusion. And that's what makes them worth examining, because even if James didn't create them, they still somehow show up in his journey. They still fill the cracks in his world, probably making that be the point of it, where larger monsters represent concentrated themes like guilt or repression. The Creepers represent something more about the setting you're in, the rot that appears when you ignore what's there. Insects infest the weak points of structures. That part is known. They're drawn to decay, and James's journey is filled with it, emotional, psychological, and especially environmental. The Creepers are physical proof that James isn't the first to suffer here, and he sure as hell won't be the last.
Who's there?
It wasn't me. I didn't do it. I didn't do it, I swear.
Hey, are you okay?
I didn't do anything. It was like that when I got here.
Eddie Dombrowski's backstory is a slow burn of humiliation. Bullied his entire life for his weight and appearance, he developed a deep emotional scar. His breaking points came when he shot a dog belonging to one of his bullies and then wounded the man himself. That act of violence marked the first time Eddie took control in a world that never showed him mercy. And the town doesn't punish him for that. It feeds into it. Here, in the fog of Silent Hill, his inner world takes on a new physical form. His fear becomes power. His shame becomes justification, and where James feels guilt, Eddie feels opportunity. He believes the town understands him, that it sees him how he suffered, and is now justifying his actions to hurt back. You can see this firsthand through the phases of Eddie's descent throughout the story, his erratic defensiveness, and the way he talks about people watching him, laughing. James tries to relate to him, to reason with him. But as the story goes, Eddie becomes less of a victim and more of a predator. Each encounter with him becomes more tense, with his paranoia becoming sharper and his logic even more fractured. By the time you find him again in the labyrinth, cold, isolated, and surrounded by bodies, he's fully embraced the violence.
What's it look like I'm doing? You fat, disgusting piece of shit, you make me sick. You gonna cry, fat ass? You gonna run to your mama? Waste of skin, why don't you just kill yourself?
The final confrontation happens in a meat locker. It's industrial, cold, and lifeless. And Eddie isn't scared anymore. He's powerful, or at least he feels like it. Convinced that James is mocking him, the boss fight that follows centers around two broken men in a town that feeds on their pain. For James, it's a turning point because he's killed monsters before, but Eddie is a human. Killing him is an act of survival, but it's also a moment of undeniable violence. The scene that forces James, and by extension you, to see their own capacity for harm. Symbolically, Eddie represents retaliation, the idea that someone wounded deeply enough can become dangerous when they refuse to process that pain. He's a warning about what happens when someone externalizes all their suffering. Where James internalizes and represses, Eddie projects. In that way, Eddie becomes a reflection, but a distorted one. He's James if James chose to blame the world instead of himself, if guilt was replaced by righteous anger, and if violence felt like control instead of consequence. And the tragedy of Eddie isn't just that he kills, it's that he feels like he has to. Eddie was never going to walk out of that town. And after this fight, James knows why.
Please. I'll be good, I promise. Tell him I'll be good, please.
Angela? Angela, it's me.
No. Please.
Not every monster in Silent Hill 2 is correlated to James. Some belong to the people he meets, people carrying their own pain into the fog. But none are more dark and disturbing than the creature born from Angela Orozco's trauma, the Abstract Daddy. To understand why the Abstract Daddy exists, you have to first understand Angela. From the first moment you meet her, it's clear that Angela isn't just lost in Silent Hill. She's been broken by something long before she arrived. From her voice to her hesitation, everything about her is cautious, fragile, and uncertain.
Lost?
But there's something deeper behind her eyes, a quiet kind of horror, like she's used to things going wrong, even though they seem calm. Angela's trauma is the context. Through cryptic dialogue and implications, it's revealed that Angela suffered years of physical and sexual abuse at the hands of her father, and possibly her brother. To make matters worse, her mother blamed her for this abuse. She grew up isolated, powerless, and made to feel like the violence against her was all her fault. Her personal hell takes on a visual language of fire, suffocation, and entrapment. She doesn't see the town the same way James does. For her, it's always burning. Throughout the game, James encounters Angela in increasingly concerning states. In one of the most visually striking scenes, he finds her in a room, lying on her side on the floor, carelessly toying with a knife, as she faces a reflection of herself. Angela, however, doesn't see herself. She sees the version of herself her abusers forced her into believing in, broken, ruined, and shameful. The knife she holds is more than a sign of suicidal tendencies. It's a symbol of the trauma she internalized and the means by which she ended it. It's heavily implied that Angela killed her father before coming to Silent Hill. She carries that weight not with pride, but with shame. And like James, she's been called to the town not just to suffer, but to confront the very thing she buried. That confrontation takes form in the monster known as Abstract Daddy. At first glance, the Abstract Daddy is confusing to look at. With a fleshy, bed-shaped structure and two human-like bodies fused into one seems dominant, pressing into the other. Both are covered by a leathery sheet of skin, and the entire creature is strapped to a metallic frame that evokes a bed or a door, a clear symbol of Angela's abuse. The figure beneath appears to scream in torment. The creature's distorted mouths resemble genital orifices, and its heavy, slow movements feel suffocating. In the remake, it even pins James to the wall and presses into him, visualizing the sensation of inescapable violation. This design is meant to be upsetting, especially after learning its meaning. Masahiro Ito, the original creature designer, once said that the version James sees is a filtered interpretation, filtered through James' mind and trauma. Angela sees something far worse, something more explicit, more personal, something she's lived with all her life. To James, the frame of the Abstract Daddy also reflects elements of Mary's hospital bed and perhaps his own act of smothering her. It's layered, simultaneously with Angela's tormentor and a distorted version of James's guilt. The symbolism doesn't just end with the monster's design, it goes deeper than that, especially during the chase sequence. There's a small closet-like space tucked away in certain areas. Inside are children's toys. If the player enters, the music and tension fades away completely. This was her hiding place as a child, the only place where she felt safe. And that alone says more than any of the previous dialogue we've encountered. When James defeats the monster, Angela stands over the body and kicks it in frustration. But it's not enough, and it never will be, because she can't undo her past. She can't erase the memory of what she was forced to experience, and her interactions with James becomes colder and more erratic. She sees him as weak, maybe even complicit. She asks him why he saved her, if he pities her, if he would still care about her if he knew what she'd done. But the real heartbreak comes later. In one of the final moments of Angela's story, James finds her again, this time in a burning staircase. The world around her is engulfed in flame, but Angela walks into the fire, unafraid, and surrenders to the inevitable idea that she doesn't belong anywhere. Her final scene is one of the most devastating in the game, not because she dies, but because of how much she believed she had to. Her world didn't need a pyramid head, because her world was already a living hell. She simply wanted the pain to stop. Where James represses, Angela remembers. Where James runs, Angela endures. Her monster was never hidden. It was never subtle. It was always there.
You see it too? For me, it's always like this.
If Silent Hill's monsters speak in metaphor, then the Mandarin screams in one. This grotesque creature, seen both in the original and the remake, was one of the more abstract monsters in James Sunderland's journey, and one that many players overlooked. But its meaning is anything but forgettable. The Mandarin is a sort of suspended horror, hanging from grates or crawling beneath floors, barely visible but always present. In the original, you'd almost always find them below ground, in sewers or industrial corridors, disconnected from the more human spaces above. But in the remake, the Mandarin is reimagined as a boss encounter inside the Lakeview Hotel. This change is symbolic of a much larger shift in James's mental state. At its core, the Mandarin represents helplessness, verbal abuse, and emotional suffocation. The kind that doesn't always leave bruises, but can still leave scars. It's widely interpreted to symbolize the emotional and verbal abuse James endured during Mary's final months. As her illness progressed, Mary became resentful, angry in fact, and unpredictable. Her words turned bitter. She lashed out, and James, unable to help her and crushed under the weight of his own despair, absorbed every word until they buried him. Its primary attack is to scream, a disorienting, painful noise that stuns James in place. Then, a long-bladed appendage thrusts out. It doesn't feel like a creature fighting, but it does feel more like a memory lashing out, like the familiar shape of someone you loved saying something you can never unhear. This isn't the real Mary, obviously, but it's how James remembered those final days. Not all of them were intimate. Some, in fact, were cruel. And James doesn't just feel the guilt of killing Mary, he feels the guilt for not being able to handle her pain, for being hurt by her, for wishing, even for just a moment, that it would all stop. In the original game, the Mandarin's location mattered. They stayed underground, kept out of sight, just like the things James couldn't face. But in the remake, placing this creature in the Lakeview Hotel, a space deeply connected to James and Mary's shared past, is a major symbolic step. The Mandarin isn't repressed anymore. It's here, in the open, just like James's truth. And that's what makes this fight matter, confronting the voice that haunts him. The one that once asked for help, and now later cursed him for not giving enough. In a game filled with monsters shaped by its themes, none loom larger than the Pyramid Head. Also known as the Red Pyramid Thing, this creature is the truth that James buried. Every moment it makes, every murder it commits, is a literal reflection of James's own inner torment. But the most disturbing thing about the Pyramid Head isn't because of how it looks, but because of what it represents. Pyramid Head is the manifestation of James's overwhelming guilt and self-hatred. After murdering his terminally ill wife, Mary, James buried the memory so deep within that he began to tell himself she died on her own, and that she sent him a letter, and that he had a reason to return to Silent Hill. But the problem is that letter wasn't real, and the Mary he's searching for never existed because James killed her. Not in a fit of rage, not by accident, but in their home, after watching her suffer for years. Alone in a hospital bed, James smothered her with a pillow and called it mercy. And then he forgot. Not in a literal sense, but emotionally. He pushed it so far deep that he built an entire lie on top of it. Silent Hill didn't give him guilt, but gave his guilt to monster. And that's where the Pyramid Head comes in. The Pyramid Head acts as the town's executioner. It simply doesn't chase James. It judges him. It follows, it watches, it even kills, and does it again, over and over. Its presence is a constant reminder that James is not forgiven, and that he needs to face the horrible thing that he did. In fact, one of the earliest and most disturbing encounters involves the Pyramid Head attacking two mannequins, an act that's violent, predatory, and deeply dehumanizing. While not explicitly a sexual assault scene, as Masahiro Ito puts it, the scene was more about evoking themes of control, dominance, and objectification. As Mary grew more ill, their intimacy faded, and James was left with resentment, loneliness, and unmet desires, all feelings he repressed. But the Pyramid Head expresses those same feelings without restraint. He isn't just torment, he's indulgence. He enacts what James suppresses. And every time Maria dies at Pyramid Head's hands, again and again, James is being forced to relive what he did. Not only the act of killing Mary, but the selfishness behind it. Maria, after all, is not Mary. She's James' internal version of her, more forgiving, more flirtatious, even more available, and the town plays with that illusion. Eventually, the tension rises to a boiling point, and the Pyramid Head is no longer alone. Two appear in the final act, and now, James faces his guilt head on, doubled, undeniable, and inescapable. But then, they stop. In the final confrontation, the two Pyramid Heads impale themselves. Their role is complete, their purpose fulfilled. James has remembered and he's accepted. The punishment no longer needs to continue because the truth has been faced. This arc is what makes the Pyramid Head far more than a monster. It makes him a guide, a brutal, merciless guide, leading James to the moment of his own self-demise. And all of that meaning is embedded in the Pyramid Head's design. The rusted triangular helmet is iconic. It hides identity, silences expression, and distorts any resemblance of humanity. According to the developers, the helmet was actually inspired by the underside of a World War II German tank, a vision of industrial cruelty. His weapon, the Great Knife, is equally symbolic. It's rather large, but more of a burden to carry than to use. Dragged across the floor, it creates a low metallic screech that cuts through the air like guilt cuts through silence. If you look closely, deep within the Silent Hill Historical Society, you'll see a painting. Misty Day, Remains of the Judgment. This depicts the town's ancient executioners, cloaked in red and bearing the same helmets. James subconsciously draws from this image, his psyche reaching for a shape to give his own guilt. That's the core of the Pyramid Head's horror. It's not a monster sent to kill James, it's a monster James created to punish himself. And it's why the Pyramid Head is so unique to James' story. And so when the Pyramid Head appears elsewhere in the series without James, all the meaning that it had is taken away. Because the Pyramid Head isn't just about any punishment, it's about the right kind of punishment, the one you ask for without realizing it. So when James finally stops bearing the truth, that monster disappears. Not because he's forgiven, but because he finally understands what he did.
Mary?
After the truth is revealed and the executioners fall, there's nothing left to hide behind. James Sunderland stands alone in the Lakeview Hotel, the memory of what he's done no longer buried, the illusions he's clung to shattered. And yet, there's still one final gatekeeper between him and absolution. Maria, or is it Mary? The final boss in Silent Hill 2 is a culmination of James's fractured psyche, not a fight against an enemy, but against the very ideas he's refused to reconcile: love, guilt, desire, and loss. She floats in, bound to a twisted metallic hospital bed, suspended in air, her body half bound, half transformed. Mechanical appendages coil around her like restraints, a grotesque evolution of the real Mary's sickbed. This isn't a creature born from the town, it's one James shaped, moment by moment, every time he ran from the truth and toward fantasy. It's disorienting, it's deliberate, because for James, the boundary between Mary and Maria has dissolved and blurred. Throughout the battle, Maria conjures swarms of butterflies. The butterflies are more than aesthetic, they're symbolic. A creature of transformation, of fleeting beauty, or inevitable decay. Which version of this final form you hear, the tone, the balance between Mary and Maria's dialogue, subtly shift depending on how you've played. If you constantly checked on Maria, stayed close to her, or lingered in the fantasy, then you're more likely to get the Maria ending. And in that version, James leaves the town with her, entering a new cycle of denial. As they walk away, Maria coughs faintly, and reminding James that the past he's running from is ready to repeat itself. If you kept your distance from Maria, focused on Mary's letter, or examined the knife Angela gave you, then you may receive the In the Water ending, where James takes his own life, or the Leave ending, where James reads Mary's full letter and finally accepts her death, choosing to move on, possibly with Laura. It's the rarest kind of ending in Silent Hill, but a quiet one. This boss fight is inevitable. Maria, this seductive ghost of James' fantasy, pleads and blames and breaks, and only when she is defeated does the letter return. Mary's real voice, her real words.
It's okay.
In this moment, James doesn't face what he did. He hears what Mary wanted all along, the truth, not for revenge, not for judgment, but to be seen as she really was, loved as she really was, and to be let go of. That's what this boss fight is. It's about finally saying goodbye to the guilt, to the fantasy, and to Mary. And in true Silent Hill fashion, how you say goodbye is entirely up to you.
I miss you so much. I tried. I really did, but I can't. Just can't go on without you. I can't forgive myself for what I've done.
Everyone knows what frustration feels like. But not everyone knows just how far it can push them. Silent Hill 2 doesn't rush you. It gives you time to get comfortable. It gives you a clear goal, a simple explanation, and a reason to believe that if you keep moving forward, everything you don't understand will eventually make sense. And for a while, that feels true. But the town of Silent Hill isn't interested in how quickly you uncover that truth, but rather it's more interested in how long you're willing to walk beside it before you actually stop to think about what it actually is. In fact, one of the very first things the game shows us is James, standing alone, staring at his own reflection. Simple, but telling, because it's in that very moment where something more, is screaming so many things. There's a reason why he's here, and now we know why.